Ram says, did you hear about Kamala's words? Are we talking about when Kamala Harris was trying to define culture? She can't give you an answer of what the word culture means. And my Termat can. And so I did cover that. That woman doesn't know how to explain anything. And that's part of the reason why she's such a problem for the United States. Everywhere she has gone in the world, and if anyone in chat disagrees with me, if anyone wants to call in, please do. Everywhere that Kamala Harris has gone, she has made the international politics worse. She has made things more difficult for America, not easier. She is the problem. She's horrible. And I can point to, look at her conversations, the one meeting that she went to about illegal immigration, only one. She's had the job to be the immigration czar since March of 2021. She has gone to one meeting about the southern border. She doesn't even talk about the southern border anymore. That's the one job she actually had. Now she has a second job, to be in charge of AI, which means she's going to screw that up as much as she screwed up everything else. She had one job and she failed at it because she doesn't even try. Ram says, no, she just said, quote, if we make clean energy and produce electric cars and we reduce the world population, then our children will have more clean. Wait. Reduce the world population? Reduce the world population? Hang on a second. That sounds insane. Folks, this is from Newsweek. So, Ram, you're absolutely correct. So, folks, again, we check and we know all the different ways that the news media tries to hide stories from you. So we do check, and we do, when we hear something that sounds outrageous, that sounds like, well, this can't be true, and you'll hear people say, well, no, that's just a conspiracy theory. See, we actually do the homework. As you can see, this is Newsweek. Newsweek is an internationally credible news agency. So anyone who wants to tell you, well, that's not legitimate, they don't know what they're talking about. Newsweek is legitimate. It is a legitimate service. So Kamala Harris, reduced population gaffe. This is a gaffe. How do you make a gaffe about this? Sparks anger and conspiracy theories. How can it be a conspiracy theory? She said it. It's not like, oh, no, she didn't say it. She said this. It's not a conspiracy theory. She said this. To quote Newsweek, a gaffe made by Vice President Kamala Harris, in which she accidentally, how can you attribute a motivation to her? See, here's the problem. Newsweek is trying to tell you that it's a conspiracy theory to think of this negatively. And the very first sentence that Newsweek is providing here, they're saying that it's an accident. How can you attribute motive to what she said? You can say that she said this, but you can't say she accidentally said this. You're not in her mind, Newsweek. Ewan Palmer is adding his politics here when he says she accidentally. You can't say that. That's not journalism. That's propaganda. Ewan, you screwed up. In the first sentence, in which she accidentally described a plan to, quote, reduce population, end quote, has been leapt upon by conservative figures as proof of a conspiracy theory. No, it's proof that she said reduce population. It's proof. It's not a conspiracy theory. She did it. It's not like she didn't say it. It's not like the quote didn't exist. Let me go on. On Friday, July 14th, Harris delivered a speech at Copen State University in Baltimore, where she described Democrats. This is the Democrat progressive plan to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, in half by 2030. Okay, quote, when we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. That's what he says. I often get people who say, Mike, how can I tell what is disinformation, what is misinformation, what's propaganda? How can I tell what's propaganda when I look at news stories? How can I know if something is true or not, or if something seems off? Let me explain it for you in the easiest way that I can. Okay, let's walk through this together so that you'll always be able to see when the mainstream media is gaslighting you, when they're trying to misinform you, when they're trying to indoctrinate you. They again start the first two words, a gaffe. She said this. Kamala Harris said this. They're attributing that the excuse for why she said this was an accident. Again, they're saying she said this, they're giving you they're confirming it, and they're giving her a reason for saying it. Now they go on to say there's no indication that Harris was actually outlining a plan to reduce the world's population. She said so. That is the plan. She said when we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, that is the plan. It's direct. There's no interpretation necessary. She said it. She said it clearly, in clear context. The context is clean energy, electric vehicles, reducing the population, which will be good for kids. It'll be good for clean air. It'll be good for clean water. The context is absolutely clear. And she's doing this speech this is a delivered speech. It means someone wrote this for her. This is a written speech. She didn't just make this up. She didn't just come out of the blue and say this. This is something that was written for her. This is a written speech. She has speechwriters. They make $250,000 a year. In the official White House transcript of the speech, the word population is crossed out and replaced with the word pollution. Well, I'm sorry. She has speech writers. There is a big difference between the word population and pollution. They don't sound alike. They're not typed the same. And if you type into you know what? Can someone in chat do me a favor? Go into your text message, go onto your phone for text messaging. Type in the word pop as you're going to write in, type the word population. When you put in the word pop, does it turn into pollution or does it come in as population? Anyone. I want anyone in America, anyone in the world that speaks English, go onto your cell phone, go into your text messenger, or go onto any program that you use where it will try and spell check for you and insert the word. And when you type in pop, does it fill in the word as population or does it change it to the word pollution? Because I am willing to say that in every cell phone of every English-speaking nation in the world, it says population. It never says pollution. Pollution doesn't come up. Hey, Ram, I want to thank you for bringing this up. I didn't even see that. That is insane. And now we're the bad guys. We're the bad guys because we're listening to a speech that was written and double-checked and triple-checked for Kamala Harris to speak at a university. So someone wrote it, someone proofed it and checked it. Kamala had to read it, and then so that she knew what she was going to say. It was put up on a transcript for the White House, and it was put up in front of her so that she could read it to the crowd. So there's at least 5 different checks that are going on, at least. And no one noticed. They're trying to tell us, but the word was supposed to be pollution, not population. Nobody in those 5 different checks noticed it until after she said it, and everyone else said, hey, wait a minute, that's crazy. Okay, thank you. Mike Bowie says, yeah, it comes up as population on Google. This is so disingenuous. It is so disingenuous that you yourself can proof this yourself. You can fact check this yourself. Go to any phone, any spell check program in the world that speaks English, type in pop, and see what they fill in. You won't get pollution. This was checked by 5 different groups of people, and up until the moment somebody said, "That's insane," that's the first time anyone noticed it and had to check it. It is crazy, Ram. Ram, thank you for bringing that up. It is crazy, it is insane, but it's also, think about it. We were just talking about human trafficking. We're talking about open borders. We're talking about a global food crisis with 30% less food in the world. We're talking about the potential of 3 regional wars, a war that is going to be going on for the next 7 to 10 years in the Ukraine versus Russia. We have Iran that is militarizing, and we're looking at, and the Biden-Harris administration wants to fund global terror by having the Iran nuclear deal, even as Iran is trying to kill women for having their hair out or daring to learn how to read. We have in China, there's about to be Southeast Asia in 2027, 2028. They're gearing up for a regional war. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, they're all getting ready for war. And at the same time that that's all happening, we have Kamala Harris, who is the worst politician in the world. She is the worst representative of the United States in the world. And she goes and tells us, oh yes, they want to reduce the population. That's climate change for you. They want to reduce the population. Is there anyone, any Democrat, any progressive, any Democratic nationalist, any socialist that would like to get onto this program? Is there any elected official for the Democratic Party at the local, state, or federal level that would like to get onto this program and take as much time as they need to defend Kamala Harris? This is being suppressed, but I know there are members of Congress that watch this program on a regular basis, and I'm not talking about Republicans. I know there are candidates for elected offices that are watching this program, and their staff watch this program, and I'm not talking about Republicans or Libertarians. I know this for a fact. They call me after the show and they talk to me about this off the record. So they can call in right now and say, hey, Mike, you got it wrong. Please do. Let's have this conversation. Ram says they have embedded in their minds that's why they can't find anything wrong with it. Yeah, they have to excuse it. It has to be an accident. She couldn't do this on purpose, even though 5 different levels of confirmation had to go on for this speech. At least 5 had to go on for her to make this speech. At least 5 levels of different people reading this all the way through and saying, yep, that's perfectly okay. Yes, telling people about the population reduction, it's right there. Newsweek is trying to tell you it was an accident, as they admit that this was a speech at a university by a vice president, which means it has been reviewed 5 different times. And the only time that it was ever questioned was after politicians, Republicans, said, hey, did you see what she just said? Do you see the insanity of what she said? It wasn't until someone questioned her. Thank God we have a First Amendment. Because we have a First Amendment and we're able to question our leaders, unlike in Canada when you try and question Trudeau, unlike in China when you try and question anything that the Chinese communists do. In those countries, you disappear. In China, you disappear if you question the Chinese government. In Canada, if you question the government, they freeze your bank account and try and take your money and your transportation. In the United States, what happens? According to the Fifth Circuit Court, as of Friday, the Biden administration can go out, and probably have, and go to every member of the news media and social media, and they can use the FBI to say, oh, by the way, when people say, and when people like Ram or when I bring up and quote Kamala Harris saying that climate change wants to reduce the population, oh yeah, you should suppress that. You should try and delete that channel, and you should try and suppress it. And the Fifth Circuit Court on Friday said that that is perfectly okay. On Friday, U.S. District Judge Terry Daugherty of Louisiana said that it is okay. This is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals of the United States, said that it is okay for the United States government using the FBI to silence your voice. Go back to some of the comments here. Mike Bowie mentions, and no wonder this same administration, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who abandoned people in Afghanistan, in the Ukraine, and most recently in the Sudan. And in the Sudan, where, as we showed you, the international media is telling you they are being tortured at this moment. Are we surprised that they're the same people who are saying, oh, we have to reduce the population? You're right, Mike. I'm not surprised by this. Ram says, I was always a Democrat and swore I'll never be a conservative. How wrong I was. God taught me a lesson. And we all can change our minds and have different points of view. When I was 17, I was a Democrat because my mom was a Democrat. It was just, that's how you always did things. It wasn't until I got to college, I went to the Marine Corps, and I was making decisions for myself that I suddenly said, hey, none of my actual views and values match up with the Democratic Party. I only picked that because that's what my mom was, because that's what we do. You know, your mom says, I'm a Democrat, so I registered to vote, and I'm a Democrat too. Okay. Because I didn't know anything. I was a child. And then as an adult, I learned about the world. I traveled the world. And then I said, you know what? I have nothing to do with Democrats. I'm a conservative Republican. Look at what they're doing. They abandon Americans around the world. They have an open border. They don't want to talk about slavery or human trafficking or child trafficking. They don't want to talk about any of that. You're not supposed to ask the question about, well, isn't open borders helping slavery around the world? You're not supposed to have that conversation. You're not supposed to ask that question. You're not supposed to ask the question about reducing the population because of climate change, especially in America, where we have already, you know what? I believe it was back in 2018 that the first time I raised the question, and I said, you know what? It is only a matter of time before the eco-fanatics that are the climate change movement, they have to, at some point, try and get rid of NASCAR. And the second thing they're going to do, they have to reduce the population. There are 8 billion people on the planet breathing. I believe the number one cause of carbon dioxide is people breathing 24 hours a day, every day. And we're increasing the number of human beings. At some point, they become Soylent Green, and they say, we just have to reduce the number of people. And here it is. They're saying it now. And because I'm saying that, the Fifth Circuit Court, again, this is being reported by CNN. The Fifth Circuit Court, the Biden administration, is suing and fighting and was given the right by the Fifth Circuit Court to block your ability to question the government, to ask the questions I am making right now, to have a commentary on the news. Think about that, folks. Does that feel like freedom, or does that feel like human rights coming from the UN? Does it feel like, or does it seem like these are human rights decided by a government and has nothing to do with the rights you have inherently by birth? Because to me, it sounds like this is transitioning to human rights, which we were talking about a little bit earlier in the program. If you think I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear that. If you think I've misunderstood something, please tell me. Tell me how. And I find it aggravating that we are seeing that the government is telling us, no, it's disinformation to actually point out what Kamala Harris said. Because Newsweek is telling you, no, it was an accident. How do you know that? It isn't an accident when 5 different levels of government, 5 different agencies and groups of individuals read her speech and have no problem with it. That's not an accident. That's something that's done on purpose. That's something that slipped through everybody. And she said it. And no one had a question. They didn't issue the release. They didn't correct this before anyone saw it. It was only after, when they got in trouble for it. This wasn't an accident. And they're saying, well, this isn't policy. That is a policy. By the fact that she said it in the way, that sentence itself, in context, is a plan. No, there is no plan. That is the plan. Again, that's the propaganda. They're playing English games with you. They're trying to confuse you. They're trying to misdirect you because basic English, that what she said is a plan in and of itself. Whether it applies to any other declared plan has nothing to do with it. She made a plan. She described a plan. Whether it's a part of a different plan has nothing to do with whether or not what she said was a plan. That is a fact. The editors at Newsweek know this. They know basic English, and if they don't, they should be fired. They know what they were doing. They are lying to you. Ram says, I think you're mistaken. I understood the Biden administration cannot communicate with social media to try to block people from criticizing the government. No, Ram, I'm not confused there. So let's walk through it because I know a lot of people are confused. So initially, we had the Twitter files. Okay? Actually, let me bring it on the screen like this. So we know that from the Twitter files and from conversations from 2018 until 2022, we have had Google, Yahoo, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok have appeared in front of both congressional hearings and Senate hearings. And in each and every one of those meetings, they have said, at least one of those organizations, if not multiple of them, since 2018, have said that they have algorithms that they have been using that will censor the public, that restrict specifically progressives and conservatives and certain keywords. And we have seen this, we have seen evidence of this year after year after year. And every time we have heard from the social media giants, but that's just an error. That's just an error in the algorithm. That's an error in the programming. It's being corrected. We hear this. We've heard this for 5 years in a row. And along with that, we now have the Twitter files that told us directly that there are agencies of the United States government that have been working hand in hand with social media companies to be that are under the direction of the White House, under the Biden-Harris administration. They work for the Biden-Harris administration, and they are going out and they are suggesting, strongly suggesting, that here are a list of individuals, which they have done, and we have seen this in the Twitter files. They provide a list of individuals and a list of topics that should be censored or somehow suppressed. That was then followed up with, they tried to create the Ministry of Truth, or the Disinformation Governance Board, which failed, which was thrown out, which was illegal. But they continued to work with those social media companies. We then saw that there was a lawsuit about this. And the initial lawsuit said there was a stay, there was a freeze that was put onto the Biden-Harris administration, that until the trial was done, the federal government, the Biden administration, could not continue, because they have continued to do this, to work with social media companies to try to suggest people that should be censored and topics that should be censored. Then on Friday, and this is what the news is on Friday, the Fifth Appeal Court said it's okay, which means that right now, it is okay for the Biden administration to tell YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, any of the organizations, every social media company in the world, and say, censor this. They can do that now. There's still a trial that is pending. It isn't final. This is going to be going in front of the Supreme Court. I think part of the reason why this was done was to get this in front of the Supreme Court as quickly as possible, because this is a First Amendment issue. So I hope that clarifies that. And yes, I know it's a little bit wordy, folks. I get it. But you deserve to understand the details. You deserve someone to take the time to make sure you understand what's happening in your own country, in our country, that's affecting the rest of the world. If we don't take the time to have the conversation, how are you supposed to know whether you agree or not? Because what, some politician said they agree with it? How do you know they know what they're talking about? Look at what Kamala Harris just said. Kamala Harris said she wants to reduce the population. Are you supposed to accept that? Oh no, but she's mistaken. Why? Because some guy in Newsweek says don't believe what she actually said? Think about that for a second, folks. Think about that seriously. I'm not here to tell you what to think. That's what progressives do. I'm not here to tell you that this is the only thing you can think. That's a progressive. I'm not here to tell you that you have to agree or else you're evil. That's what Joe Biden says on a regular basis. I'm not doing that. I'm telling you, here's the information, and I will include the links at the end of the show so you can read it for yourself. You saw it on the screen. You can look it up right now. It's up to you. And you can decide for yourself whatever you want to think. And you can tell me, you can call in right now and say, Mike, but you got it wrong. I don't agree. Okay, we can have that conversation. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, admitted he has not read the Arizona immigration law. Let's think about that for a moment.
I know it is a difficult task to stand up in front of our peers and say that Congress has failed to listen to voters.
You here at CPAC said yes to President Donald Trump in 2016, and I know you're going to say yes to Florida.
She was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is a intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about.
I held the AR-15 in my hand. I wish I had it. It is as heavy as 10 boxes that you might be moving. And the bullet that is utilized, a 50 caliber, these kinds of bullets, need to be licensed and do not need to be on the street.
That's right. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a representative in Congress who is writing laws to deny American citizens their rights, has no idea what she's talking about.
And they are against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you support that?
We shouldn't have any problem in meeting that error rate, because last time I checked, there were not a lot of planes crashing into each other at airports, right? You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
No one wants to point out the quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people.